Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Paul?
Hey, happy Friday. But you're glad it's Friday. Great job all week. The face of tradertainment. I have to give credit to Black Swan for that. Will Black Swan. So, yeah, wild day.
Wild day for sure. Very nice end to
Will
the week
Black.
here. We got about 27 people watching right now. We know the stream wasn't listed. Shout out to our production team behind the scenes who does a lot of the work for the production to go as well as it does during the daytime session. And they were shorthanded today, but called Jack up and said, "Hey, man, can you list the stream for me?" Got on it right away. So thanks, Jack, for that. And I hope you guys have a great weekend and get some rest. But yeah, Coach, I've been on Topstep TV all week. It's been a great week. Um, Seeing a lot of positive messages from the community about their trading, and stemming from what we're doing here. So shout out to everyone in the community for taking really good trades, applying learning and putting it into action, and going from there. But welcome to At the Buzzer. Let's see how many people we got. I'll wait for our the bots. Look like they haven't showed up yet, but we'll give them a minute. Um, Let us know how you did in the chat. If you were up on the day, down on the day, Coach. This might be like our start of Discord days where we got 50 people here and we can address some direct questions, which may not be such a bad thing.
Yeah, on a Friday.
Yep.
It's always good. It, it's always good. Like this weekend, I'll throw it in now while we're waiting for it to fill up a bit. On the weekend, just review your trades. Spend an hour. You don't have to spend all day. Don't frustrate yourself. I find it very enlightening when I do that, because some of the trades I look at, I'm like, who was that? Was my other me? You know, and when you do that enough, it it helps you understand the importance of not trading emotionally and having a process and executing the process. And last week we talked about getting better. I did better at that this week. So highly suggest doing that process on the weekend. It can be painful, like, but
Necessary.
it's necessary. That's how we get better.
All right. Welcome to At the Buzzer, our market recap. If this is your first time here, I'm Coach Jay. That is Coach Paul. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. And because we are at Friday, we'll review what happened over the course of the week potentially. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded, but we believe there's our goal as traders is to identify opportunity, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. We did have some news out this morning. We had a U.S. durable goods number, Canadian retail sales number, and Michigan sentiment number that all came in. Well, durable goods, actually, they all came in better than expected, besides Canadian retail sales. And it looked like somebody might have had the number a little early. If you look at the market's response, really nice rally in the equities before the print. And once the print came out, especially Michigan sentiment, the movement to the upside kind of died. But outside of that, no, not much more scheduled news, Coach. Anything you have comments on the news, or should we just get right into the technicals?
I didn't listen to any news today. I just listened to the market. So you have my answer there.
There we go.
It was interesting. We were lying, looking for news now. The Canadian, what? Nothing. I love Canada. I have family in Canada. I love Canada. Might have to move there. But no, just joking. The I mean, when we're doing that, we're kind of searching for news. Um, and I'm a technician. You're a technician. Um, so I stick to that. Um, I don't look for reasons. I'm just looking for results.
By the
So,
time you get the reason, the trade probably already happened, already
um,
played out. So let's
and let's be
get
in.
into the markets. The top percentage movers on the day, again, there are about 35, 36 markets that we can trade with Top Step accounts. not just the equities, although the equities did present some really good opportunities today. But let's look at the percentage movers to the downside. We had corn down 1.36%, soybean meal down 1.42%, and wheat futures down 2.06% for our biggest percentage mover to the downside. To the upside, the energies, nat gas up 1.76%, crude oil up 1.98%, and RBOB gasoline futures, our biggest percentage mover to the upside at 2.18%. Crude oil already in the big four. We talked about that one, 1.97%. The NASDAQ up 0.48%, gold up 0.28%, and the S&P is the only one to the downside in the big four, down 0.14%. Where do we want to start, Coach?
Let's go with the equities.
Let's go with the equities.
There was a lot of drama there.
Yes, there was. I'm going to pull up the NASDAQ because that is where we had trades in the house account today. So we will focus on the NASDAQ right now. We have this is a 3-minute, we'll switch to a 30-minute chart here. Take these drawings off. And Coach, we got that 200 moving average, that white line. Been pretty much a flat line over the course of the last week. And yesterday we had a sell off below it. And today looks like a mirror image of the move to the upside. Both of them
It's
closing at it. Go ahead.
symmetry.
Yeah.
That was a great point. It looks what's the trick to flip the chart? The
Alt I. If
alt
we
eye.
alt,
Let's alt eye that to see
it's
what it
just
looks like.
the same chart.
It's yeah. All basically back to where we started yesterday morning.
Yep.
Um, but interesting that we started this last night. If we look at the half hour from last night, on the opening, VWAP stayed in that range.
Let's find the first 30-minute candle. That is going to be right here. Review up to that. And yep, stayed in the range.
Stayed in the range, tight range. But once again, our cousins in Great Britain took the lead, broke out of that range. VWAP left it, and that was really the beginning of the rally. Because once they took a hold of it, we never made we never went lower than that. And when it broke out, it broke out and settled above the 200 moving average, where it was the base for the rocket ship that came right back to Earth. But great job in seeing that this morning. But S&P was a little different because the NASDAQ is, as we've seen, has been this week has been stronger than it's acting the opposite it did the month before. But wow,
Has some catch up to do where the S&P made new all-time highs and the NASDAQ hasn't. Still really hasn't caught up to that move. All-time highs in the NASDAQ were still at least 4%, 3.5% off the all-time highs. So it has some catch up to do if tech, and we have tech earnings coming up next week. So maybe we're seeing the beginning of that strength.
Yeah, but it was a nice move. It was interesting on my daily levels. The NASDAQ went through all of them. I had third level resistance at 206.20 and the one ATR daily range resistance at 206.60. At that point, I had been long. I just got out and I started feeling remorseful. And this is where greed comes in. Wouldn't be enough to take about 5 ATRs I'd be disappointed if I couldn't get the next two. That was going on, but I did get out, and talking earlier about reviewing um, over the weekend. This is where the other me comes out, the greedy part. Um,
Mhm.
but I did notice framing out that first half an hour
The New York session,
of the New York session.
big range.
It's a big range. We managed to hit every level of resistance in a half an hour. And but what's interesting is we frame out that first half an hour. My VWAP never left the range.
Did it. It's this top red line here, never left the range. Was a very we did have a house account short. Mohammed, first time on fast markets, really good trader, and called out a potential short. And I think the one thing I want to bring up with this trade, on the short before we kind of ran up, and we talked about it, Coach. Flows were to the upside. That 30-minute range was a pretty big range, and it got going early. The urgency that VWAP left the NASDAQ uh, caused a little hesitation in this trade. We got short, and I liked position wise where he got short, right? We had a little bit of an extension, and I knew that I was looking for at least a reversion to VWAP or the opening range to buy it. And I think we got short at 564, 5 contracts. And initially, it was a trade that was in the profit. We were in the profit about 20 points. And, a lot of the comments said, wow, that was the wrong trade. The market's going up. And absolutely, the market was rallying to the upside. If we look at where the profit target was for that trade, it was at 20,542. The market traded to 20,544. So I think that's an example of, if you're a counter trend trader, identifying how much room the market is giving to you, and 2 points away, maybe just taking it off. Um, we were right about that. He was right about that very short market movement. But if you're counter trend, sometimes you got to take exactly what the market gives to you, because you know your target is 2 ticks or 2 points. Could the market continue to flush? Maybe, but we see how strong it is, and when you're counter that flow, it's important to take the profits when presented to you. Outside of that, it was a trade that was in the profit until it wasn't. Um, but if you're a contrarian, keep that in mind.
Yeah, and a contrarian move too. I suggest you start with one unit.
Mhm.
Um, don't do any more than that, because if you're right, it's going to pay off, right? But if you're wrong against the flow, you can get creamed. And then you don't have any bullets left for the day. Dip your toe in the water. You know, I think you did it when you did a micro.
Did yeah.
Um, that was great. I was really proud of you. I'm like, that's exactly put in a micro, like just get a feel.
Well, no
You
water.
gotta if it works, guess what you can do?
Get another one.
Add another one. Um, and then save bullets. I'm no good at it, period. But that's one way to do the contrarian style is, here's one. Let's see. It's like putting in an ante in poker. Okay, I got to see I got to get some more information. Oh, I got it, but it only cost me a chip. But if you got it and you were right, okay, the next hand I'm going to keep that in ante and add another one. Add to it, get some more information, and see if you can play with house money. Um, those can be great trades. Actually, at one time today, that was a better trade than the buy
Yeah.
if you could add it to it. But two-way market. You know what's interesting? I saw this on. We talk about getting a trade on close to volume. Now, when does the volume fail on the buy side?
at 700 major level. Continued to push it up. And from what I saw, buying failed initially at this 700, right, where we pushed through major levels, 600. We ran through 600 like it wasn't even standing there. And we pushed up to 700, and there's some indecision about, trading above this major level. Hogue mentioned it as well. And if we zoom out and maybe look at let's go to like a 4 hour chart. Um, this, and I think we mentioned it, this 650 to 700 area has been somewhat of a resistance. Um, and it's where we ran up to, and the market said, you know what? No, I don't have anything else. That being said,
And
it did go ahead.
no, go ahead. It's so
Did
true.
it did present an opportunity for a buy, right? I think that what I was saying the whole time during fast markets was we'll get an opportunity for a trade, but I don't want to take a long, right? At this point, right, the market's rallying. We know we have Michigan sentiment coming out, and that could change everything in the market. I don't want to buy. Could I have bought 20,640 and made 50 points? I could have. But has that been a trade that also just turns around as soon as the news comes out? It has as well. So I have to stick with the technicals that say if you want an entry in this, it has to be close to this volume. And if you wait, eventually you do get a test. We get the Michigan sentiment number that comes out. We reject at 700. And coach, this to me was
I
uh,
was
a
thinking of you there.
clear high of day pattern. We have Michigan sentiment, which is this range marked out up here, and VWAP anchored to Michigan sentiment is a flat line. So from the time we got this news, the market stopped picking a direction for almost 2 hours, or even longer. So this test of this VWAP gives us an opportunity to limit risk. If you bought this VWAP, it happened very quick, but it was a 8 point drawdown for a 5-to-1 trade. Now, do you wish you would have just got into this one? Of course, but I would take a 40 point trade in the NASDAQ every day. Um, and that could be the one for the day, but you have to be patient, right? If you FOMO into this and buy it right below 700 and say, yeah, we need a breakout, you need convinced buyers to continue buying above 700, and they showed us that they were done. So if you were buying anywhere, 680s, there was a lot less meat on the bone for that trade. So being patient and waiting for that pullback was important there.
Yeah, great analysis. When it was up at even, I looked at that. That was another reason I was kind of done. I didn't want to sell it. I only wanted to buy it, and you know, but great when it was up there. I'm like, okay, I'll go look at something else.
Ultimately, it did present eventually a nice short. We can see this Michigan sentiment range once we started to, and VWAP started to trade towards the low of it, acting as a resistance. We get back below the New York session VWAP as well. We can see the volume pick up. We talked about this with some of the VIPs and the false breakouts, and we've talked about that here as well, where this looked like a breakdown out of this range, but there was no follow through on the volume. Look at this volume pattern here. We get a spike, coach,
Yeah.
and volume dies out. We get another one where it looks like we're leaving that range again. Spike of volume, it dies. Try one more time. Spike of volume, it dies. And we keep bouncing back into that range. When we start getting follow through and volume is consistently increasing, price eventually uh, leaves that range.
Wow. And it went right to the VWAP. Did it settle over it? Okay, even if it settled over the VWAP and you were waiting to buy it, it was a great cheap trade. If you buy it, get out under VWAP. That saves the beating which ensued. So, take a jab. There's a classic jab, jab, jab. Um, but there, and also, what is that? The pinch, the
It
VWAP
is.
pinch.
It is. And once we broke out of that pinch with volume, you don't even need to preempt this, right? Let it break. because once this breaks with volume, I could get in short here, and if I'm especially if I'm trading with micros, risking the high of where it broke. Once the market goes, it's like you turned on the fire hose. You're not going to stop it. So you're getting in the flow, and there's a ton of very quick points available to you. This is a 27-minute move to the downside, 127 points. But depending on trade location here, you could still get in somewhere close to volume even after this candle, uh, with limited risk. Right, you could risk about 20 points, $40 with a one lot micro, and it's a 3-to-1 trade in very short order. So being patient, it's the one thing I'll continue to talk about on Topstep TV when I'm on. I'm not always the most patient trader in my own trading when I'm trading here by myself, but um, it's the one thing I think we could take one trade a day, if we wait for the
Yeah.
setup, and that make your day.
That leads to a question from Anuj. I am following the one side bias for the day. Um, my win ratio is increased a lot, but how to avoid FOMO? First of all, it's a very common, right? I was patient. It's going without me. Um, all that emotion. So go to your plan, your process. If you miss it, what's the result? Higher risk. And then you're dealing with hope. Like, I got to catch up. So if it doesn't fit into your process, you don't take it. And that's it. And it's going to happen. So it goes back to keeping simple steps so you don't get overloaded, right? And then waiting for your setup or your trade. And sometimes we miss them. You're human, I take it, and we're not perfect. But put it this way, you're going on the right path. And what I would do is review that. That's one of the things we review over the weekend and build up your, it's like a shooter in basketball. Don't be afraid to take the trade or the shot. Some of them miss, but you don't score without shooting. But with that, if you just shoot just the score, which is leaving your process, y- it's a very low probability of success. So be positive. You're getting on in a good mode. It's improving your win ratio. Focus on that. It's going to build confidence. I mean, when your win ratio is a result of a good action, now you just have to hone in. And you'll get to a point like, well, fuck me, I missed it. All right, maybe I can find another opportunity in another market. That's something you could do in your practice account.
One thing I'll add to that, coach, is like you just said, your win rate is increasing. Sometimes in order to get something, you have to let something go, and you're getting an increased win rate, and you have to let go trying to catch every trade. Unknown says, I don't support one trade per day. It will put you under immense pressure to be correct every day. Um, when I say we only need one a day, I take more than one trade a day. But truly you only need one, right? When I say you only need one trade, it could be one trade and that make your profits for the day and you go. I think focusing on or saying, "Hey, we only need one good trade a day," helps you ignore a lot of the noise, right? Ignore a lot of the, "Oh, this looks like a decent setup, but it's a C. I don't really love it, but I need to take a trade. I need to put something on." Being patient, uh and taking that one good setup could be the one trade. And if you see another good one set up, great, but you only need one.
Great point, coach.
And
You know, go ahead,
the
finish.
sorry, the immense pressure to be correct, I don't think that has anything to do with the quantity of trades you take. I think it has more to do with learning how to accept loss. Um, because that one trade a day could be a loser. If it's a good setup and I've accepted how much I'm willing to lose on the day, then that could be my one trade as well. But you don't have to click the button a whole bunch of times to get to that point. And I think if there's immense pressure to be correct, uh, find a number that you're okay losing regardless of how many trades you take. Go ahead, coach.
Yeah, sometimes it's a good point. That's where you give a risk budget where,
Right.
hey, I'm not, I'm not gonna put all my chips on the first deal. All right, but I have to put something up. I have to ante up and be consistent with my ante, and so I can save ammo. And if I don't, I'm going to lose all my chips, and I'm not going to be around. So that is the process, and that's part of the art of trading. Sometimes, you know, FOMO can lead to. I visualize. You've seen those shows where they put, tens of thousands of dollars in a glass case, and I turn on the blower, and then everybody has to grab all the money. You're never when you're in that situation trying to grab all the money, it doesn't work, does it? But if you have a process to stuff your pockets with a good percentage, well, then you've done well. So these are really good points, and I'm glad people are learning, and because that's part of the process.
Was on the NASDAQ. We did break out of that pinch that we saw. Actually, this is the one last thing I'll say on the NASDAQ. Um, the weekly VWAP pinch and the monthly VWAP pinch, we broke out of it. Out of it this morning, and we said it yesterday, right? Whenever we get a break out of this pinch, it's going to be a violent move. We broke out 300 points to the upside. Uh,
Yeah.
so when you recognize this pattern, just prepare for a violent move in whatever direction it breaks. We don't really get to choose which way it is, but you can even see it here, right? Not as violent because we didn't stay in the pinch for as long, but this is a 200-point move to the downside. This we stayed in this pinch all day, allowing the market the time to build up momentum, and there it goes.
Wow. The
I do want to
pincer movement sounds like tank battle.
I do want to bring up the Russell because this is the one trade I did take. We were talking about the Nasdaq. We were feeling the FOMO of, oh man, we missed the trade, and we were trying to force trades. And this is what I'll do, and I did it on fast markets, but I will scan a couple of different markets and see which one is presenting an opportunity. The Russell, I did end up taking a short at 22.51 half, I believe I was short. Um, and I just want to explain why I took this trade. A lot of the time, we'll talk about going in the direction of VWAP. I haven't explained this trade too many times, but this was just looking for a reversion to VWAP because we've gotten so far from it, right? Um, VWAP being below the opening range and price below it tells us to go short. VWAP being below the opening range and price way above it without VWAP coming back to price tells me that you know, there aren't very many convinced buyers up here. And then when we see the rejection at this major level, 2250, right, where we got some buying at 2250, but look at the volume, not very convincing. Uh, and this VWAP not catching up to price, this tells me that whoever bought this uh, probably doesn't have as big as pockets as they wish they did. So I'm gonna fade them and risk the highs. And ultimately, it turned out to be a really good trade because this VWAP stayed at the low of the opening range. Um, but I didn't know that the move was going to do this. Right now, I could zoom out and say, downside targets are higher time frame levels. Yesterday's low is ultimately where we traded below. But going into that trade, the price still left the range to the upside, right? So there is still the potential for a buyer to step in. So when I take this trade, conservative price target has to be 50% of the opening range. I'm not going to just take the trade off, but that's going to be where I start to trail my exit. When this holds, next price target is the other side of the opening range. And then if we can get back under VWAP, now we have that trade that's, short the low of the opening range. That this could be the start of a trade. The reason I really like this entry is because I'm getting a better price already than these traders here. Worst case scenario, I make money to their position. Best case scenario, they come in and continue to sell and I make money with them.
Nice.
And I think I got out right around these lows, 42. I think I ultimately cut the position. Didn't have to, but
Why
I think
didn't you
that
just hold on to it till the lows?
I didn't know. Thought these were the lows. uh, in hindsight, is a really good trade, but this VWAP was flat, right? So this VWAP is pretty flat. And flat VWAP says range bound market. So seeing this bounce off the low back into the opening range, I trailed and I just got tagged out on the trail. Could have trailed to 50% of the range, which is probably where I should have gone and then been safe. But I'm also trying to dig this account out of a drawdown, so I'm going to take some profits when they present them to me.
That I have to congratulate. That's discipline. When you're in a drawdown and you get a good trade, it's you're trading, you're getting back, you're not digging anymore. It's a really good idea. Um, so great job. I hope everybody learns from that. That's an important. It helps you, you know, break the seal. You know, because otherwise, frustration. When I was joking, why didn't you just hold on to it? Is that all of a sudden that thing turns around and you're giving it back and you freeze. If anyone's been stuck in this, you know exactly what I mean. Um, taking it, it was a great trade. By the way, it was what, 2 to 1, 3 to 1?
2.5 to 1.
Okay. Day trading, 2.5 to 1s are they're the fat part of the curve.
Take it all the time. There was one other thing I wanted to mention about this, but I
Oh,
don't. Go ahead, coach.
we have a question from Chris Breezy. How do you draw those two red VWAP lines?
On the left side of your drawing tools, you have so make sure you have this drawing tools panel up on the left side here. 5 down, you have forecasting and measurement tools. You're going to click on the arrow, and halfway down that menu, you have anchored VWAP. I have a star next to mine because I use this all the time, and it's up here in this drawing panel up here. So every time I need it, I just go click and then click on a candle, and it anchors it from there. You could change the settings. The one setting I did change is this is set to open, high, low, close divided by 4. Um, but that's about it there. Found it.
All
Awesome.
right.
Awesome, Chris. Awesome. Good question. His royal Coach Paul thinks he's he's funny. The reason we're laughing, guys, we get that question so many times, and I laugh at it because I've explained it probably 100 times, and it's okay. When people ask, I'm gonna keep explaining it. I've told myself to save my voice a little bit that I'm gonna turn it into a YouTube short, but I appreciate people asking the question because it means that you want to use the tool. So I'm gonna appreciate that every time.
100%.
Right,
It's really, I mean, you are correct. I get a chuckle out of it because it also is giving information how important and people are seeing it.
right,
Because if they didn't care, they wouldn't ask. So
correct.
great question. You know, as what I tell my players, it's not, there's no such thing as a stupid question. You know what's bad? Is not asking a question when you don't know. That's bad. And that
100%. Yeah.
So
It's a good question.
thanks,
We got
coach.
we got some other questions here, Coach Jay. Can you walk us through the trades or trades that caused you to have a big drawdown that you mentioned? It was just throwing around two lots in the Nasdaq. I could show you what the executions are. I mean, they are what they are. It was embarrassing. I'll say that at the most, and maybe me showing this will allow me to never do it again. But it was a lot of frustration being on Topstep TV yesterday. I'm human, guys. As much as I have this calm demeanor all the time on Topstep TV, and everyone's like, "Oh, Jay is, he's so calm, he's so patient, he's so this and that." Uh, Sometimes it's not. Full disclosure, this is going to look very ugly. I was upset that I did not catch that gold trade, um, and instead of just walking away and locking myself out, I allowed for a moment emotions to hijack my trading decisions, and I want to show this because this is something that we all have to avoid. Um, are you streaming? Are you two streaming from separate locations? Uh, no, we're right next to each other.
Oh,
But yes, we are streaming from two different locations. But yeah, here it is. Nasdaq yesterday. Just a bunch of bullshit, basically. A mess, a disaster. That's all it is. Really nothing else other than that. And I will say, and Dakota says this all the time. Sometimes we have this trader, and we have to be so. In doing this, we have to be so buttoned up as coaches because we don't want to. I only want to deliver the information that's going to help, and this may help. And what I can say from this is, and Coach, you said it the other day. You can break rules, you can't break principles. Uh, I broke a principle there, and I paid for it. So now I have to go all the way the other way and take my ego, take my frustration, sit him down on the desk, and say, "You sit here until you figure out what you just did." Um, and that's where it is. I it's an honest look at what happens when you don't control your emotions, and I try to do a very good job at doing it. And sometimes it gets to me. Um, I think it's the one thing, Coach. We've talked about this before. It's probably the one thing that always comes up in my trading, and then why I'm very conscious of it when it happens. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with. Um, I can. It may not seem like it, guys, but I could be very opinionated. I can be an ass sometimes. My best friend, his name is also Jason Cook, which is weird. But he calls me an asshole all the time because he's just like, you have this personality where you're very cool, you're very calm, but every once in a while, like there's a flip that switches, and I have to be conscious of that, right? And that's why I'll always talk about knowing exactly who you are, knowing who your good trader is and your bad trader is, and when that bad trader shows up, do whatever you can to get away from your trading platform because we know what the result is going to be. And sometimes we allow it to affect us as traders. Um, so, identify who that person is and do whatever you can to keep them away from any decisions that have money involved. I'm happy I did this in my X of A and not in my personal account. But I'm not happy I did this at all. But if it helps anyone learn in their journey, take that as information.
you know, that was a um, great answer, and that's pure honesty. Um, you know, w- we are human, and this happens to trading. So slowing down and recognizing, and this is not easy. I I had the same personality. I was, you know, I came up in a different time where you were expected to be tough and take pain, right? The more pain you took, the tougher you are. Well, let me tell you, that doesn't work in trading arena. Um, so sometimes our first reaction is to fight through it and keep fighting. And well, I fought the markets, never won. It's never won. So part of and by the way, I'm still vulnerable to that. The greatest thing that on Top Step X is your own personal DLL. That's why I limit mine to 12%. It's never I because I'm always vulnerable to it, and you know what? You don't know it until it's done. It's like there's person A and there's person B, and which was wild because your best friend is Jason Cook.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
we met in college, playing ball actually. We moved into this apartment complex, and when I moved in, they said, you know, when you pay your rent, make sure you write your room number because there's another Jason Cook in this complex. I'm like, what? That's weird.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll probably never meet this person. There's a bunch of apartments here or whatever. Playing basketball literally the next day. And after we played, we're like, "Oh, what's your name, by the way, man?" We're just meeting people. It's the beginning of the school year. He's like, "Oh, my name is Jason." I was just like, "Uh oh." It's like, What's your last name?" It's like Cook. It's just like, and that was it. We've been friends since that day.
That's it. How can you
Um,
not be?
yeah, we've been
It
friends
sounds
since
like
that day,
A Disney story.
right? Shout out to you, Jay. But Yeah,
That's
it
awesome story.
happens. I had an emotional response. And coach, the one thing I want to say is, I lost in that account yesterday. I probably lost, I think it was two grand in that XFA. Do I want to lose 2 grand like that? Absolutely not. Um, but there are people who have lost millions of dollars in this business, right? Millions, sometimes billions of dollars. And could it be a technical reason? And when you get to that amount of money, there definitely are more parameters for what happens. But I would say losing that much without risk managed is at some juncture an emotional decision, right? There's probably an ego decision. Hey, I've built this account up to billions of dollars. There's no way I could lose. Blah blah blah. The hedge funds that were short GameStop, that started out as a fundamental trade and then it became an ego trade. And instead of
And,
taking the go ahead, coach.
you're you talk most vulnerable when you've been on the top. You just said it. This is, you're you start losing the principles that got you there. You start,
Right.
I can take a bigger loss. I'll just wait till it's a scratch. And you go, it's it's like next thing you know, I can't take this. And it just all of a sudden you're in that. Like all the things that you didn't do can happen. And this we're all vulnerable to it.
Sure.
So
And I think we all need part of that as well, right? You need a healthy ego to be able to say, "Hey, I've seen this pattern play out, and I'm going to take the trade." And Vince Borrego said it. I think that's what we all have in common, being traders. Absolutely, but we have to always keep that in check because we want to make sure that we're making decisions in the best interest of our account and not to protect our ego at all. So. Glad I could share that. Uh, Chauncey, thanks for asking the question. And I think it's important to share.
great discussion.
Uh, let's get back to the markets a little bit. Coach Vince says the flash crash. What a day for traders. Yeah. Um, what else do we want to talk about? Oh, look at gold. Still making new highs of the day as we speak. Uh,
Oh wow. And that wasn't an easy buy either.
no,
They made it hard as gold will. Um,
it was actually the good trade that I took, but
let's go over it.
right. And I think we got some questions in the chat. So we'll go over gold and then we'll get back to the questions. We got about 15 minutes or so left. So let's look at gold. So initially, it was a great short last night, coach.
No, it was a classic. Actually, I sold a micro and went to sleep,
Yes.
and I woke up, and I think I made a tenth of what was available, and here, and this goes back to ego. I just said, "Fuck, I got to get out because if I put it on at night, I need to get out before the in the you know before the U.S. Open. I'm usually but 7 Central, and man, I was like, oh, I didn't. By the way, I didn't frame it out. But I had my stop, and I just got out. Made I ate like a cat. I could have ate like a horse, but yeah, that was. It looked like it was Katie bar the door, but go and I'll hand it off to you.
Looked like it was gonna sell off. Last night, we opened up near that 200 moving average, pretty much right at the 200 moving average. We sold off below it, couldn't hold, and this is the 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart that we're talking about, that white line here. We sold off under it. We know how strong that 200 moving average is, and today was just a day where it needed, a little bit of time below it. We haven't spent much time below it at all this month, and now that we got this out of the way, it looks like it's ready to make all-time highs maybe in the next couple of minutes, if the market didn't close. Uh, but 2760 close here, and I don't think there's much stopping this gold rally. Of course, anything can happen, and that could change next week. But just a really nice trade. It gave a great opportunity to buy this 30-minute opening range on a retest above it. Eddie was calling this out um, in the fast markets chat, but we claimed above this 30-minute moving average. Sorry, 30-minute opening range. Once we got a close above it and this like test to the tick and rejection of the low, this is a great opportunity to take a trade here. I'm gonna on a 3-minute chart, coach. We'll go to the gold open, which was it's 8:20 Eastern time. We'll call it somewhere around here. But VWAP anchored to that since New York opened was supportive, right? We get a pullback to this 30-minute opening range close to VWAP. Presents a really nice opportunity there. Uh, Anything else you got on gold, coach?
Yeah. I wish I would have bought the Christmas gift for a family and my girlfriend last week. No, look at that. It has the feel that something's going to happen this weekend. That's just the feeling. I don't know, but the way they would turn around and that kind of finish, that's kind of sneaky. Um, yeah.
I did say earlier in the week that we were going to talk about a setup that we haven't talked about on YouTube yet. And what a better time to do it where we don't have our full audience here. So just as a Friday, thank you for anyone who did join us after we didn't have the stream listed. The trade that we were going to talk about, coach, if you look at, now this is on a 5-minute chart, the floor close, if you will, for gold. Remember this trade, coach?
Oh, yeah. I watch it every day.
Uh, we're giving it away today. And this is probably the only time I talk about this special for you guys. Golden oil. Paul H. Golden oil.
There
Um,
you go.
so the gold close, we see this volume spike, right? Just when you get a chance on any gold chart, pull up a 5-minute chart, and you're looking at the candle that is 12:25 Central Time. This is what is considered, I guess, the floor close for gold. What used to be the floor close. Go ahead, coach.
Yeah, that is. That's where the settlement comes from
Exactly. Exactly.
versus the close. So then this one, that settlement came somewhere in that bar, usually in the middle. Um, then there's the close, the last tick of the day. But well, how many dollars difference? About $10 difference. So then when it opens up the next session, you're like, wow, it's $10 higher. But wait a minute, it can be confusing. But go on, coach. This is a treat.
It's one we haven't talked about a lot. But again, you would trade it the same way, same concepts that we have for any other range and view up, right? If volume leaves this range early, you would be following it because gold sometimes does trade into the equities close. We can see volume try to leave the high of the range. We talked about this yesterday during slow markets. If volume looks like it wants to leave the range, but it's not, it's kind of iffy, your better entries are going to be below the range. This gives you an area to limit your risk, and a really nice trade into the close. Here is, it wasn't the biggest move because a lot of this happened, after we are locked out of top step accounts. But even, from this low to where you could have gotten it for the trading session, it's 4 points. Sometimes it's not 4 points. Sometimes it's a lot more. Depends on the day, depends on how gold wants to trade. But uh, and his royal, so it's the 12:25 Central Time candle. 12:25 Central Time. If you pull up a gold chart and look at a 5-minute chart, it's going to be that a random volume spike every day at that exact same time.
Which makes sense. That's
Yep. It's like the open.
day traders have to even up. But what we used to call it, it seems to be like window dressing. Um, it used to be a very common term, but um, what that means is the longs that are positioned after the close, because the total volume goes down, it's easy to run that price up. So you save a little ammo. This is for larger funds. You save a couple hundred lots to for window dressing, um, to pad the statement.
Nothing works 100% of the time. It's not a trade that's going to work all the time. Here's probably an example of it working out pretty well, but whatever you do, manage your risk. Here is that exact trade presenting 10 points in gold, pretty much straight to the downside. So, um, something to look over. Like I said, I'm probably not going to mention that one too much more. I don't take that trade every day. I don't remember to take it every day. Uh, but something, if
You,
you want to study
you
the
have
charts and
too
add it. Go ahead,
you
coach.
have too much money.
No, I mean, sh- I honestly at one point I set a phone alarm to 1:20 Eastern time just to remind me to take that trade or at least to look for it. Um, because sometimes it's a really good trade. 12:25 Central Time, correct.
Okay,
Uh,
so the
go ahead, coach.
Globex close for gold Central Time is 12:30. So that's the close. That's the last 5 minutes, 12:25 to 12:30. On the chart, it's marked as 12:25. Oh no, that's boy, it brings me down memory lane in the pit, literally, because you would have we used to call it the afterbirth. There was a 2 minute after the closing bell. There was 2 minutes to allow locals to even up, and all some paper would come in and just come in and just buy a chunk more. And sometimes locals you can't get, won't, like day traders or local traders won't get in front of it, and it can exacerbate a move because they can't take it home. So you're on
Coach
to
Vince just
something,
said,
young man.
and to bust the trades. Yeah, it's sometimes it presents a really good opportunity. I don't know that I want to talk about any more markets. We got some questions here that I think we could go through, Coach.
Oh, we didn't go through oil.
Oh, my bad.
Was the
Uh,
best trade of my day.
Go ahead.
No, it
Look,
was. But no, it was a great move in oil today. Let's start with the 30-minute. Um, w- uh, and by the way, I was joking. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the easiest trade, but crude finally showed some action here. We start out last night. We traded kind of choppy. I mean, we went both sides of that opening range. Um, very sloppy. I made some trades in it, lost a little bit of money. Trying to buy it now. In retrospect, the VWAP did not leave the high of the opening range. I too am human. Step, but it's going to eventually. Okay, well, it cost me about $300 to do that, but merry old London came in, and let's mark out the 2:30, 3 o'clock time with London time. We talked about this before. They set the tone. So someone came, whatever was, maybe Brent Crude was on sale, but we took off right after that sign made that. And this has been a pattern. It's
Says
like it's a hook. We used to call it a hook. Like get some shorts in there, and they bite, and then reel them in to the top. Um, that especially when you put that VWAP in like that, that looks like a J trade with sellers selling, and then when the buying gets above that, I said the volume of buying, which is interesting here. It was bigger than the volume of selling, but it didn't take out the highs. And lower volume started the rally. Um, but we established VWAP from the London Open. And even if you sold it, man, a scratch is a win or a small loss. You had a chance for a small loss on the seller. Hey, that was me. Um,
good loss.
good loss, but I ended up I do have to sleep every now and again. Um, woke up. No, I won't sing the Beatles song because it'll make me feel old. But I did see this. It got to VWAP after the U.S. Open, and I took some heat, held VWAP, and that half an hour. I don't know, whatever the news is, don't know. Um, Ended up being a really good trade, and it was a little even more dramatic on a 3 minute because it just kept on going. That was like like a sweep. Just keep buying it until we get a couple thousand, and oh, there was the spike.
Was so this was very interesting. The one thing this short was actually technically it's the short, right? That's the trade you're supposed to take. Volume left the range, um, price left the range. This 70 level just killed everything. I don't know what might have been sitting out there as far as orders on the bid, but that whole number level just held. What was really interesting, I don't know if you saw this, coach, on this spike. We were on fast markets. Andres, it's like, oh man, gold is just shooting up to the upside, and it looked like it was just gonna go at 72 even. Somebody put a 215 lot there, and the market said, "Okay, we're good. Never mind. Um, we're gonna stop there."
I've had
Two,
enough.
215 lots on the offer, so that means there's a passive seller there, and all of this buying that looked like we moved $1 in gold in 24 minutes, and really it was in 6 minutes. 80% of that was in 6 minutes. Um, and as strong as it looked, we get to a technical level, 72. Somebody put a big offer out there, and the market said, "Okay, we're good,"
We're
and we
good.
rejected. I actually thought about shorting that just because you don't see that size out there often in gold. And the one thing we talked about a lot here, Coach, is the sustainability of this volume. Look at this volume candle compared to everything else around it.
Yeah, it was like I said. That's what a sweep. Just keep buying it till we get net X. Price does not matter. Whether it was a short that was covering or it was a new long, I don't know. But then they're going to come in the market in the same fashion. Like if you're stuck, you're stuck, right? Like, you can't play around. But and also someone could have said, okay, I'm buying. We need to buy this today. But it's all going to have the footprint, the same footprint. Why? Do we need to know why?
No, Coach, I have a question for you, and this
Mhm.
is just a hypothetical. Let's say, like you said, maybe there's an entity that has to buy it. right? And they might have to fill a ton of orders. Is it
Yeah,
possible that that same entity puts that offer out there at 72 to keep price where in a range where they want to buy it?
that's possible. It's possible,
Not probable.
or it's a really good question. There was we don't have time for this, but I can say in a great it's a great question. Okay, I'll just cut it close. Um, Back in the old days, well, China used to come out with announcements in the grains when I was in the grain room, and this was a classic. We're going to buy 5 million tons of, let's just say, corn, a big number, and then a headline would come out, right? And everybody read that headline, and market would take off. And sure enough, it would have this, and then some Chinese customer would sell exactly what you just said, sell 250. And I got to know a lot of international grain brokers, 007 types, right? And he said, "Oh, that's a classic Chinese thing to do. Is they'll buy some for themselves, for their own. They have to buy. They maybe, and then the next thing they do is they'll make the next announcement. Then they'll sell theirs, all right, the 250. Then they'll make an announcement. Well, we're going to have to cut that back to half of what the original headline was. So,
No. Well,
yeah,
I don't want to put the tinfoil hats on 200 of us, but Vince Borrego says it. He just commented in the chat. Isn't $72 the top bid that the U.S. will buy to refill our oil reserves? I just did a quick Google, and this article is back from 2022. Uh, the administration is announcing its intent to use SPR repurchases to add to global crude oil demands um, when the price of West Texas oil is at or below 67 to $72 a barrel. Um,
okay,
with
okay,
initial
that's part.
repurchases being delivered in 2024, 2025. And now we're getting into why, we want to try to stay away from that, but that's, I don't know, man.
Well, it's good talk. I mean,
It's interesting.
that could be it. Like, here you go. Now you could have another entity going. Let's get it, or it was stuck. We don't know, but that would make sense. We went up to a level, and they said, "Here you go. Here's 250. We might have some more 50 cents higher than this. Give us a call." You know, like um, actually that's part of the market. It's the market forces, supply and demand. Now, I love the story. The Chinese, the grain, and it wasn't just the Chinese. Anyone who's going to do that on the size, heck,
You want a good price. If I'm going to trade that much size, I want the prices that I want.
in stocks it happens. But it's part of the process. Big trading houses float with the fight to float the stock, so they get a piece of it, and they can get a risk-free trade. It's part of the game.
In that much size,
Yeah.
it matters.
Why it matters doesn't matter to us is we don't get that.
Correct.
They're not calling Jay Cook 1 or 2. Which one is it?
Neither one of us. Neither one of
They
us.
haven't called you, either of you. So this comes full circle about trading your account, executing your plan. Um, and the whys are fun to talk about, but it isn't going to make us better traders.
We are at time. We're above time on a Friday. I want to thank everyone for hanging out. I want to thank you, as always, Coach, for this week. Great stuff this week. Great trading this week. And really good conversation here. That we got into a little bit of a what goes through my mind sometimes when I'm seeing some of this volume stuff go on in the trade. It's like who's clicking that button to do that. But I appreciate you all hanging out with us. We did get some questions that were unanswered, but we will get to some of those next week. So if we didn't answer your question, make sure you bring it back next week and we can get to it. I got nothing else before we get into the weekend, Coach. What do you got?
Get some rest.
Yes.
Take 1 hour for a review. Don't overdo it. Live life. Was Andre says, touch the grass, enjoy family and friends, and come back Monday or Sunday night prepared and rested. And by the way, Coach Jay gave us a nugget for our loyal viewers on a Friday afternoon here in Chicago and New York. And because we aren't really next to each other, that that is useful. Enjoyed it. Great job this week, Coach. Everybody have a great weekend.
And we will talk to you all next week. Remember, the week starts with Nick for a Tick on YouTube at 4:45 Central Time with the market kickoff to prep us for the week. Until then, we will speak to you. Coach, have a great one.
You too. Good to
Talk to
be
you soon.
next to you.
Bye.
Bye.